Christopher Nolan has made successful and iconic films in many different genres. He's made great psychological thrillers, detective films, neo-noirs, science fiction epics, and conquered the blockbuster film landscape on many occasions. But even after all the wonderful films we've seen from the filmmaker in the past, I think there's reasons to be incredibly excited about Oppenheimer, and through the potential of its story, its filmmaking, and its integral focus on character, I think this could be one of the auteur filmmaker's very best. So in this video essay, I'm going to be discussing the main reasons why I think Oppenheimer can be one of Christopher Nolan's best films, even after all of the great work he's put to screen. Before I get into it though, if you want to keep up to date on any of my content surrounding Christopher Nolan's latest film, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into why Oppenheimer can be Christopher Nolan's best film. One thing that has always got me excited about a new Nolan release is the personal touch that the director manages to bring, even if his films are big in scale or driven by visual filmmaking. There's always a deeper sense of thematics or a personal message at the heart of his theatrical movie making. Memento was taken from a very real experience that his brother Jonathan Nolan encountered. The Dark Knight was a reflection of his and many others' fears towards the escalating terror in a post-9/11 America. Interstellar was a more human film, but one that focused on a father and daughter relationship stemming from Nolan's own parental experience. And Inception again grew from that idea of a fatherly bond, with the moments where Nolan would watch his kids playing outside of his office window, an image that would become an iconic one in the very film. In a recent Empire article, the director said, "I've always worked in genres that are pretty far removed from my own life, but I absolutely see my life and its evolutionary points through that, right from Following, which is about a lonely wannabe writer in London. The fact that there is some relationship with my growth or evolution as a person, being older, being married, having kids, and now my kids are getting older and leaving, it tells me that I'm trying to write from an honest perspective, even if I'm writing a science fiction film or a thriller or a superhero film. I'm not one of those filmmakers that looks back at what I've done in the past and goes, I should have done that differently. I just want my films to pose interesting questions." Of course, there's comparisons between all of Nolan's work, big or small, and the article mentions this, but the stories themselves are their own separate beasts. And the hype surrounding Oppenheimer is definitely in its own category. It's not a big blockbuster, as to say, and it's not a film that's going to make $1 billion at the box office. I mean, sure, if it did, amazing, but what specifically is exciting about this particular project is that Nolan is going back to his roots in a way that I think many of us have wanted for quite some time. And that is through a return to character-driven films. After seeing Dunkirk, a film about soldiers we didn't know anything about, fighting to survive and get home across the channel, and then Tenet, a film driven by a protagonist who, again, doesn't really have a big human backstory, it's refreshing to see a filmmaker who once delivered great character-driven films returning to that bracket. Now, I love both Dunkirk and Tenet and the approach of those films, and I'd argue that that was the right approach for the types of stories that were being told there. But Oppenheimer is tapping into the earlier work of, say, Memento, Insomnia, The Prestige, and even Batman Begins, where we follow the central figure either through their early life or through a complex and traumatic period of it. In fact, Oppenheimer is covering the whole story and a total of 45 years on screen, screen in 3 hours running time. What I think many of us liked about those earlier films was the deep dive psychologically into both the character and the larger situation at play. And what gives Oppenheimer an even greater advantage when it comes to this very point is that while the situation surrounding the film and the importance of the atomic bomb's development is huge, the director is taking an approach where at first hand we follow Oppenheimer through all of this. In recent interviews, he said that the entire film, or mainly the colour sequences, which take up a huge portion of it, were wrote in the first person, and that both the camera and the direction of scenes is from Oppenheimer's central perspective. That on its own provides an opportunity for a deeper intensity with the main character, and it helps us to get into the mind of one of the world's most intellectual and game-changing figures. On top of this, Nolan and his effects team have crafted moments in the film where we'll actually go into Oppenheimer's mind and see the atoms moving and the science going on in his brain visually. And that takes the whole writing on the window aspect in biopic films to another level. If we're going to follow someone for 3 hours, we better be in that person's shoes and get their full perspective so that we as an audience can understand them better and in turn understand the scale of what is going on. Taking a story like Kai Bird and Martin Sherwin's American Prometheus, giving it a personal touch and putting us as close as we can to Oppenheimer himself is, in my opinion, a genius move made by the filmmaker, especially after reading the book that all of this is based on. Coming to that book and the storytelling material available, Oppenheimer's life is very much told in broad strokes. Yes, you get moments of dialogue and even full transcripts of the trial scenes that took place after the bomb's development, but all the earlier development stages and other moments in Oppenheimer's life are told as you'd expect from a biopic. And Christopher Nolan is taking that and applying a more first-person approach to a lot of it. I don't know what research he's done to get all the real details of particular moments, but if you know his history surrounding other projects, he tends to strive for as much reality as possible, even when it comes to franchise films. With Dunkirk, he made veterans cry when he screened them the film because he reimagined it in the way that was so authentic to what happened on that beach. And he even went to the extent in Interstellar to put real science into a computer to visualize what a black hole might look like. It may not have turned out 100% accurate in terms of the science on display when we saw a real image of a black hole, but it ended up being quite an impressive visual prediction. So by going the extensive route to capture the 45 years of Oppenheimer's life realistically, I think it's going to make the central messages, themes, and points in his story even more effective, especially when it's driven by Oppenheimer himself. Now, having read the book, there's pure moments of complete tension, there's emotional breakdowns, and all the components that make for an insane thriller with an encapturing tale. And the central thematics are ones that connect to everyone like every Nolan film does. Presented as a tragedy, Oppenheimer's story is viewed today as a cautionary tale about hubris and the role of the intellect in the world of heart. It's also a story about the lack of trust from all sides, whether that be from a political perspective, a scientific one, or one that's very personal. And of course, it's an epic tale about how the world forever changed based on the epic race against time to build the first atomic bomb. It connects to all because our world would not be the way it is today, both for good and for bad, without these events happening. And while you could say that there's an epic sense of story to every film that Nolan has done in the last 10 years, the difference again with Oppenheimer is that there's a man, a character, and a knowledge of that person's life at the heart of the whole thing. Dunkirk was marketed as the event that shaped our world, and while it was an important event that was captured brilliantly by the filmmaker, we did not truly understand every character in that film, as we'll probably do with Oppenheimer. The themes and storytelling potential for this is perfect for a large-scale Nolan film, and yet it's not a traditional blockbuster that we'd usually see from him. And speaking about that large-scale approach in a more intimate way, I think with the filmmaking guiding that too, it's just another reason to be excited. Having this objective versus subjective approach with both black and white and colour sequences, having a newly created IMAX camera that can be used in both up-close photography and in dialogue scenes, and applying what we'd expect from Nolan's traditional practical filmmaking focus appears like a match made in heaven. Even critics who haven't loved Nolan's work over the last 5 to 10 years have always praised his practical sense of filmmaking and ambition when it comes to large-scale photography, and when you combine that with more character-driven scenes and find a way to film more personal moments with big IMAX photography, it could take the typical approach of a biopic to a whole other level. They made a big focus on this in the IMAX behind the scenes featurette released the other week, and I think when it comes to the filmmaking side of things, this is by far one of the main reasons that excites me for seeing Oppenheimer on the biggest screen possible. We as theatregoers usually go to an IMAX film expecting the most breathtaking images and filmmaking on display from a purely aesthetic side of things, and we hope that as a whole it just elevates the importance of the storytelling. Recently, we've seen many blockbusters or large films shot on the format that either do one or the other, but Nolan goes another step further because he films for real on actual film, and he presents it in the biggest format possible with 70mm. With Oppenheimer, he's doing that once again, but this time with new IMAX cameras, shooting black and white IMAX for the first time, and having actual new platters developed to hold this film and its extensive running time. He clearly cares about preserving film as a historical medium, and he truly cares about the theatrical industry and the way things are shot and shown. And to me, when a director has that passion and strives to present a film both from a storytelling and a visual perspective in evolutionary ways, I can't help but be incredibly excited about Oppenheimer more than I have with recent Nolan projects. So overall, the director focuses on telling stories that appeal to him that in turn he thinks will appeal to the audience in a big way. It's no coincidence that the tensions and problems going on in the world today reflect what's likely being told in Oppenheimer, and it seems that Nolan is aiming to present that in the biggest yet the most personal way possible. And I think by doing that he achieved something much greater than having an Oscar on his mantle. No matter how big and large in scale a Nolan film is, he writes and directs what he's interested in and puts a part of himself into it. There's a level of passion with him that we don't see from many films, franchises or directors in large-scale filmmaking today. And I think going into this, he's learnt from everything he's done in the past and is essentially combining the best of that in one true and important story. While Inception is currently my favourite Nolan film, and it may still be after Oppenheimer, I think his latest work could surpass that. And this is because, like I've touched on, it has all the potential to go further with every level of the filmmaking process. It has an intense and fascinating story that relates to all of us. It's apparently as close to a Nolan protagonist that we've ever gotten. And it's evolving filmmaking and IMAX in ways that we never thought was possible, all in the format of a biopic film, which tends to be a lot smaller. So if it does what Nolan and the actors involved are saying it does, then it ticks all the boxes. And like how he's elevated multiple genres in the past and set the standard with which those films are compared to, what's to say he doesn't do it again? But that was my video discussing why I think Oppenheimer has the potential to be one of Nolan's greatest films. Again, it could turn out to be either a great movie or even one of the director's weaker films, but just going into it knowing his consistent track record, what we've heard about the project, and understanding the material that he's adapting, it makes me incredibly excited to see what he'll do. Whether it is great or not, I think we can expect the filmmaker to strive for something we haven't seen before, and yet really capture this story with his directorial stamp. We'll have to see, and of course there's not long to wait until July 21st, so when that day comes, I will be leaving my expectations and hype at the door and just ready to experience what Nolan has done with his latest film. But are you excited for Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer? And like me, do you think this could be one of the director's best character-driven films? And what else particularly excites you about it? I'm interested to hear what you guys think, so let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. For much more videos and news on Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.